Today, I have the pleasure of sitting down with Jim Belosic, the founder and CEO of SendCutSend. SendCutSend is absolutely crushing building factories here in the United States, and in my mind, is one of the few manufacturing companies that is genuinely competitive with China. So with that in mind, I want to start this off with, what does it take for a U.S. manufacturing startup to be competitive with China, and is it even possible today?
Yeah, of course it's possible. It takes scale. You need a lot of scale. Manufacturing in the US right now is like, I think 93% of it is companies that are 100 staff or smaller. And then like 75% of that is companies that are 20 staff or smaller. So lots of, mom and pop type shops. You put them together and we're a force to be reckoned with. But no one is really scaling at the proper level to bring prices down, increase speed, whatever. So that's what we're trying to do. We compete with China on parts right now, maybe 20% of everything we do, 25%. We actually can meet or beat China, but I'm not happy with that. I want it to be 100.
Right now, we have a bunch of machines in the background that in most cases are like semi-automated, or a large part of the process is automated, but there is obviously some human touch. So how do we actually make, companies like this competitive?
Yeah. Automation is not the magic bullet. Fully automating and dark factories and lights out manufacturing or whatever. Yes, it helps, but that's not the magic bullet. We'll get there someday, but today is not the day. You have to have a mix. We're really happy to have robots where it makes sense to have robots. And then we have good dudes where it makes sense to have dudes and dudettes. Everyone thinks like, oh, because China has cheap labor or whatever, the only way to compete with that is to automate. What we found is, no, you just have really good labor. And if it's expensive labor, they care. They like their job. They want to produce a good quality product. They want to hit deadlines. They want to go faster. They want to improve the process. So you take really good people and you level them up with really good technology and you're good to go.
I know for the past 8 years, you've been in bootstrap mode and you've raised almost no money to date. A lot of people, when they're starting a manufacturing startup, they just raise a huge amount of money out the gate before they actually have any product or customers, and they kind of hope things will work.
Yeah, what's it called? Product market fit?
Yeah.
That's what they're looking for?
You inverted the entire thing where you raised almost nothing and then figured out this entire process and how to scale before you raise the money. How do you kind of go from that R&D mode to now you're going to be scaling a bunch of different factories around the United States?
So I'm trying to show people what the path is. I hope that we're a template for how to do this. My belief is you have to figure something out, at a very small scale, prove it, get the customers, understand what customers want, understand what your capabilities are, scale it using profits of the company. Mm-hmm. My thinking is very, very old school. I've said before, I run this company like a lemonade stand. I buy lemons for 50 cents and I sell them for $1. I take the extra 50 cents and invest in more lemons, right? So my concept of running a business is you have to be profitable from day one. Now, not everyone has, $1 million laying around to go buy equipment or whatever. Neither did I, but you can get a loan on it. So to anyone listening out there, make sure that you have good credit. Leverage credit and debt to get your business off the ground. And then put your head down and grind. We're 8 years in. People are looking at us and going, oh my gosh, you're an overnight success. It's like, no, you haven't seen us get, punched in the face for 8 years. Now is the time for us to really add rocket fuel and go to the next level. So the challenge that we have is we've gotten to this big scale where it's very difficult to continue bootstrapping. For us to, in the old days, to open up a new facility, maybe it was $1 million, something like that. Now, for us to open up a large facility, it's $50 million. And I can bootstrap that, but it's on this timeline that I'm very impatient for.
Yeah, I know there's also this dynamic of you don't want to be turning away customers, but you also want to make sure that the products and services that you're providing are of the quality and standard that you care about. And so if you want a 24-hour, 48-hour turnaround from someone asking for a part online and then having it show up at their door, you can deliver that at small scale. But then if you scale too quickly, maybe suddenly things slip. And so how do you kind of think about making sure that product service experience that you create scales with the company?
That's really hard. It's culture. So because we've scaled, we've scaled fast by some measures, but we've scaled slow by others. We've scaled fast for, a self-funded or mostly self-funded company. I did raise a little bit of money. Shout out to Mark and Sandy. Thank you. We didn't take, this massive amount of money right at the beginning when we had no idea what we were doing. So it forced us to go at a certain pace and build the culture without getting too far over our skis and falling over. So what I'm concerned about is, with some money to spend, all of a sudden you go 10x faster. Do we start hiring people 10 times faster and there's, 50% of them aren't the right fit? Luckily, we have this really deep culture already ingrained. So everyone new gets to learn from the people that have been here. They understand how we operate, what our quality standards are, how generous we are. So doing that at scale, you need about 400 people in order to serve everyone the Kool-Aid. It's because we're going to have another 1,000 people coming on. I couldn't go from 10 people to 1,000. I can probably go from 400 or 500 to 1,000.
Even with money, you can only scale culture so fast. And I think Sam Walton, one of the things he did was he would fly to different Walmarts and basically just see if everything worked and what was amiss. He would go to the distribution centers at 5 a.m. and bring donuts and talk with the truck drivers to see, get a pulse for 5 different stores at once. How do you kind of scale yourself while you're doing that if you can't be walking the floor every day?
Yeah, you can't. So I run into that every day. Just walking around this facility, I see new faces all the time. Right now, as we're filming, this is C shift. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'll come in on a Sunday and see 10 new faces. And, some people will be like, hey, where do you work? What department do you work in? I'm like, I don't know what department I'm in. So I can't be everywhere at once. And thank God, because that's exactly how you put a ceiling on your business. If you think that you're the only guy who can go around and make sure everything's working perfectly, you'll be limited by how many hours you can be awake. Very early on, I knew that I wouldn't be able to do that. So having, an incredible staff as my direct reports, they are my eyes and ears. They go around, they understand what I want. They understand the vision of the company. And I understand their vision too. The office of the CEO it's not just me as CEO. It's 5 people. The CFO is 5 people. The president is 5 people. Everything is kind of like a group of us that are all additive. And then that way, no matter if someone's on vacation or traveling or whatever, it's basically the same answer to any question that happens across any facility. So hiring great leaders that are a culture fit, and then just doing it time and time again, that's the only way that we can do it. We spend a lot of time traveling now. Our travel budget is through the roof. We're going to have to address that at some point. I don't know how. But especially when we start a new facility, you have to be out there for weeks at a time in a rotation with myself, with other leaders. So they understand the background, the history of the company. They can be a really incredible operator. Maybe they came from some massive manufacturer and they're going to run our facility, but they don't know SendCutSend. And so it takes weeks and weeks and months of us going out there, them coming out here, blending it all together. It's hard. Yeah. It's fun, but it's hard.
Yeah. I know you just raised 110 million or something like that. Yep. And I know for a very long time, you were very conscious and thoughtful about not raising money. And you had some good reasons for doing that. But at some point, I think things flipped and there was so much demand that you just could not scale fast enough without external capital. So what kind of made that flip in your mind?
In my perception, I thought I was disappointing my customers. The only way that we can control demand is by increasing lead times or raising prices or saying no, put a banner on the website and it's sorry, stop ordering. We're not going to hit our deadlines, right? That's super painful. And it's incredibly expensive to the brand. We built our brand for years and years on speed, quality, good price, incredible service, So as soon as that starts to slip, I think you can grenade the entire company. So we're okay, we got to go faster. But demand was always outpacing our budget, outpacing our bank covenants. We have great lending partners. People give us a loan on our machines all day long, but there's a lot of stuff that you can't get a loan on. I can't get a loan on tripling the size of my software development team. I can't get a loan on these crazy R&D projects that we need to go and experiment with, and we don't know what the outcome is going to be. So what I'm happy that we did is we waited so long to say yes to taking on money that I didn't have to give away the farm. I didn't have to give away
like 50%
control
of the business.
Yeah, I didn't have to give away, my vision or anything like that. We built a really, really awesome company that looks great to our customers. It looks great on paper. And so when it comes time to negotiate, like, hey, I'm going to give up a chunk of my baby. We gave up 10%. That amount of loss of control was acceptable to me in order for the gain that it's going to get me to my customers, because that's a shit ton of money. When you have to produce every single dollar of profit, as a team over years, when someone can just inject a bunch of capital and you get to run with that and add capacity and add scale and lower prices and increase speed and add new capabilities, it's like, okay, that's a trade-off I'm willing to make. But I'm glad we didn't do it too early, because it wouldn't have been 10%. It would have been, 50% or 70% or who knows what.
When we were just at dinner last night, we talked a little bit about expectation setting and making sure that whatever you're saying that you're going to do, you actually do it. And not only that, you kind of exceed it most of the time. How do you think about expectation setting in your mind with the customers or even with suppliers and vendors and stuff?
For expectations, my son is joining us in the audience here. I always told him, I was like, I don't make threats, I make promises. If you don't clean up your room, I'm going to throw out everything on the ground. And it's like, I will throw out everything on the ground. And then I had to buy it back again. So anyway, that hurt me more than it hurt him. But expectations are promises. So if I promise a customer that it's going to be there on Thursday, it better get there on Thursday. If I promise them that it's going to cost a certain amount, it's going to cost a certain amount. So the expectations is live by the sword, die by the sword. The issue with it is it's like a ratchet. When you improve stuff, that's the new bar. You can't go backwards, which is where, we run into these crazy challenges. Manufacturing is a hell of a lot easier when you're not quick turn. So from day one, we're like, oh, we'll be quick turn because I'm impatient. I want my stuff fast. We should do that. Scaling that is really hard. And then as you get better and better, you're like, cool, let's shave a day off of our lead time.
It's like Amazon, where they say suddenly it's 2-day shipping or 1 hour shipping, and people don't want to go back.
Yeah, no, you can't go from 1 day shipping to 7-day shipping. People get super pissed, and I would get pissed as a customer. I'm still a customer. I think about myself as a customer. I'm the number one representative of all of our customers out there, and I want what they want. Actually, I think I want more than what they want. I'm probably the most demanding customer that we have, and I'm never satisfied. So I'm always ratcheting those expectations and making sure we hit our promises.
Were there any specific examples in the history of the company where you did have those expectations or set a high bar for expectations and then just completely missed them? And how did that feel?
Yeah, well, it still happens, and it happens through nature. If the pass gets closed during a winter storm and, we can't get trucks over the hill, or mechanical issues, maybe a machine catches on fire and we have to evacuate the building for half a day or something like that. Someone accidentally hit a sprinkler in the ceiling and, so yeah, you have to make some calls, send some emails, and let people know that we're going to disappoint them. I love to be part of that conversation. I like to get the pain so that we can make the system more robust so it doesn't happen again. That's a big part of our expansion across the US, because, just operating out of Reno, usually in the winter, it's pretty easy for us to go east, to go west over the Sierras. Sometimes things get stuck. But if we have different facilities in, Texas and Kentucky and wherever we're going, they can all help each other. We can all load balance a little bit. Usually we can get something on a plane in Memphis and then they can fly over the weather and then make it to Southern California or whatever. So yeah, we have lots of challenges every day where we disappoint people. But if you're arm's length from that, it never hurts you as much. Like I want to get touched by it. I want to like feel the burn so that I don't do it again. Like I'm so stupid. Like that's the only way I learn. You can tell me that it's hot. I have to like grab it and see that it's hot and get burned. So being like on the front lines and feeling the pain with the customer and having the customers yell at me directly, I'm like, okay, cool. Let's have backups on backups. Let's have more material in stock. Let's have additional customer support people so that they're not waiting for a response for, hours or whatever. It's things you learn over time. You finally figure out where all the weak links are, where the chain breaks, and then you make the chain stronger in those areas.
When you're kind of looking out over the next like couple of years and you're thinking about how the scale up will end up unfolding, what does that actually look like in your mind?
Speed. Speed is the main thing. I think Amazon kind of showed the way where if I can get it to you tomorrow or even in 2 days or whatever, people like the convenience. People are lazy. I know I can get in the car and, go to Target and get some stuff, or I'm like, oh, if it's going to show up tomorrow, that's fine. So that Amazon effect on speed is trickling into every other aspect of our life. DoorDash with food, I'm like, oh, 30 minutes? That seems like a long time. It's like we're so spoiled. So people get spoiled on everything being almost instant gratification, and it's going into manufacturing too. So, if you give me 1 million square feet, I could have a huge mega factory, and I can produce parts really, really fast, but I can't get them in your hands fast enough because actually one of our constraints is our carriers. UPS and FedEx are incredible, but it's expensive to move things by air all the time. So, you go do a ground network and coast to coast, it's 5 or 6 days. If shipping from Seattle to Florida, it takes forever. From Southern California to Massachusetts, it takes forever. So the future is, distribution, I guess. I want to make sure that we have capacity wherever there's population centers. I want that accessibility in all those population centers. I want people to think about SendCutSend like Home Depot. I go to Home Depot all the time. If I knew that I could just go to a local manufacturer that was super accessible and I could just walk in the door and be like, hey, I need this made, help me out, help me figure it out. That would be amazing. I think more of the US needs that. Every city has tons of manufacturers, but their doors aren't open. Some of them don't have websites. You got to know a guy or whatever. So we're trying to change that. I want to show the example of what we're doing, being more open to the public. It's actually a good way of doing business in manufacturing. Our customers can grow with us, or we can grow with our customers. We started out just doing prototypes and, stuff for hobbyists, guys in their garage. But now, 90% of what we do is for, large enterprise. We do thousands of parts, millions of parts, for individual customers that are doing, huge projects. For a long time, when someone needed that many parts or they needed that much capacity, we'd have to say no, or our prices weren't competitive, because it's hard for me to lock up a facility just for one customer and then disappoint thousands of other customers because the machines are going to be busy on that project for a month or whatever. So scale for us is being able to say yes to everything, including, this traditional stuff that would be done by these very large, OEM level manufacturers. We're doing it today, but we're going to do a lot more of it.
You started this business in a very unusual way. This is not normally how people start companies, where they're using their own money and taking on loans and doing all this stuff. This is the way I did it.
I thought it was super normal.
Having a whole bunch of money behind you now, I don't think a whole lot of things changes. It brings up timelines. It makes it so you can scale faster, but you don't fundamentally change. You don't suddenly flip to unprofitability so that you can scale, grow unprofitably like most companies do. So what things are going to change and what's going to stay the same?
Everything's going to stay the same, except for our timelines. Without money, I can hit most of my goals in the next 5 to 8 years. With some cash, I can do that in 18 to 24 months. So it's a time machine. It's literal rocket fuel. We're already doing well. We're growing. This is fuel on the fire. We're going to go faster. Things that won't change, I'm still cheap. Frugal, I guess. I know we talked about that in the last one, but it's my upbringing. It's our culture. we buy stuff used on Facebook Marketplace. Our scissor lift that I'm staring at, got that at auction or something. So I try and make sure that I'm a good steward of money, whether it's my money or somebody else's. I think if we had taken a bunch of money right at the beginning, that's when you end up with brand new, super amazing forklifts and crazy equipment that you don't really need, and maybe too many staff. And then you have like a really nice conference table for some reason and Herman Miller chairs. And, it's like, no, just focus on your customer, have a good product, focus on profitability. We have that muscle memory forever. I had it in my last 2 businesses. I had it since I was little, mowing lawns. I was like, oh man, can I do this pattern a little bit faster so that my hourly rate, I'm more productive or whatever. So it's in my nature. It's in our nature as a company. So all of that is going to stay the same. We're going to go a hell of a lot faster though. We're going to have more capabilities, better customer experience, which I think it's pretty damn great right now, but I think it could be better.
On the customer experience side, like you're very focused on trying to create as much love with your customers as possible.
Yeah.
What is the thing that is the biggest, like keeps you up at night because it just sucks right now?
The fact that in periods of high demand, we can't take the time with a customer and really hold their hand and understand like what their project is, give them advice on how to make it way better or whatever. Sometimes we can spend, an hour, working with a customer or whatever, but I'd love to have it unlimited. If we need to go back and forth with a customer, jump on a phone call, invite them to a facility or something and be like, hey, show me your thing that you're trying to make. Hey, we can re-engineer it so it saves some money here. Or hey, if you take a 1/2 inch off this dimension, we can actually fit more on a sheet and it's going to cut your price in half or something like that. That would be so fun. We get to do it sporadically, but what if we could do it every single time? It's an investment that doesn't make a whole lot of sense on a spreadsheet. When the finance guys look at that, they're like, why are you spending all this money? But it feels damn good as a customer. It makes me feel good as like a company that I want to run. If people can learn about manufacturing through our customer support, then hell yeah, that'd be amazing.
Last time we talked, you were very wary of having a CFO and having someone that was too focused on making money and too focused on watching the costs to the detriment of creating real employee love and vendor love and all these things. And you have this wonderful concept of gym bucks where you'll just hand out $100 bills as you're going throughout your day. How has that kind of shifted? Like, why did you decide to hire, someone in finance, and what is shifting there?
Oh no, we still have no CFO.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I'm avoiding that for as long as possible. And shout out to Andrew and Matt, who actually like believed in me to give me a bunch of money without having a CFO. It's because I think they know that I'm frugal. I'm frugal but generous. Like I like generosity to our customers. I like generosity to our crew. We try and take really good care of people. So what you're talking about is if you let someone who's only focused on the dollars and cents, it can erode that customer satisfaction. It can erode, just love with the staff. One of the things that I'm fighting actively right now is, we're almost at 500 people. With that size staff, as we approach 1,000, 2,000 people, there's policies and rules, and HR starts to become this like big org within an org. And they love to be able to point to a chart and say, okay, you have this many years of experience and this, and that's exactly, you're going to make $31.18. I'm like, what if they're awesome? Like, what if they're doing stuff that you can't track? Like, can't we have some flexibility in there? So we're trying to build in like a slush fund, where it's merit-based, but sometimes you can't just like line all these things up. There's intangibles. I don't know, maybe that's a theme of our whole company as our approach to, our product and finance. It's intangible, doesn't make sense on a spreadsheet, but it sure as hell makes sense when you're on the receiving end of it as a customer or staff member or whatever. So as long as I have control over slush funds and intangibles, and I can keep a lot of hundreds in my pocket or whatever, or if I can, upgrade stuff to overnight, to make a customer happy, or some MIT kid that's working on a Formula SAE car and we have to throw an engineer at the project for him or whatever. When you pencil it out, you're like, oh man, that just cost us, thousands of dollars worth of time. I'm like, yeah, but help the kid get his project done.
Yeah.
We're in that position. Like, why not use it? You know, what do they say? What's the good of having fuck you money if you can't say fuck you? That's what I want. I want to be able to do stuff that feels good, whether it makes sense on paper or not.
I know you've been like very focused from the beginning on like hobbyists and people that just tinker and build things and they need a part quickly. But as you kind of scale, you're going to be able to go from just having a given part and you have to like know CAD and stuff to be able to even order it, to you basically just type in, here's what I want, and then a finished product comes to your door. So how does that actually look like?
Yeah, it's happening now, right? So we built our own tools so that you can kind of talk to it and say, hey, I need this kind of bracket, you know, it's 3 inches long, whatever, and we can generate the CAD for you using LLMs. And that's good. But I think there's a limit to what we can do in-house. We only have so big of a team. We only have so many ideas. What we're doing is we're just open sourcing, you know, how our system works so that everyone else out there can go and make better tools than we could even make. Hey guys, here's all of our DFM calculations. Here's our limitations. Here's our capabilities. And it's all in, you know, a language that's readable by an LLM. It's like, go make tools, go figure it out, go make your own plugins, go make your own little use cases, and we'll manufacture it for you at the end of the day. I don't want to, you know, gatekeep anything. I just want to make parts. So if people can understand our ecosystem and make really cool tools to make even more parts, then I'm all for it.
As we were walking through the factory and just doing a tour before this, there was a sign that said 3 p.m. is the new midnight. And I think that is basically when the trucks leave. And if the trucks don't leave on time, then they don't make the plane, so the parts don't get delivered. So how did you kind of like come to that?
We had this problem where, you know, on work orders, it has different due dates. So, hey, it's due, you know, into bending on this date. It's due out of powder coat on this date. You know, it's due to ship on this date. So let's say, you know, it's June 3rd is the due date. We would have people like, oh man, high five. You know, we shipped it on June 3rd. But I was like, no, you missed the damn truck. You know, you shipped it June 3rd at 9 p.m. Like, that doesn't count. It's not a real ship date. And I think you've experienced that as a consumer too. It's like, hey, you order something and you get a shipping label and then you're watching the tracking and like, it hasn't moved, it hasn't moved, it hasn't moved. We don't want to do that. So yeah, 3 p.m. is the new midnight. Is just a culture thing. It's like, hey guys, if it's due today, it's actually due today by 3. Hustle. You know, I want to see the Indiana Jones, you know, rolling under the door to get it into the truck type thing as it's pulling away. And we do that.
What's the biggest thing that you're fearing right now?
I'm fearing the unknown of having a lot of money to deploy. Capital has been a great constraint for us. Everything starts from there. It starts with like, how much profit do we have? How much can we spend? How much debt can we handle and service? And all of our decisions have worked backwards from there. And so now, you know, with some great partners that believe in us, that's not really a constraint right now. And I don't know what the next bottleneck is. You know, we're going to find it. I'll find it really damn quick. I believe it's actually going to be recruiting and training. I think we have 3 recruiters right now. We have 2 more coming on board. So 5 recruiters. We need to scale up our HR staff because that's a whole thing. But then even if I could hire, let's say I had 50 recruiters and I could hire 200 people in a day, I can't train them. I can't train them that fast. So we need trainers. We need all these different processes. Like, we need more classrooms. We need more equipment that's just dedicated to training so that we're not taking it out of production. That's my fear. I have vague ideas, but I don't really know what's going to happen. So we're biasing towards optionality right now.
What were the biggest like bottlenecks or, you know, things that you would have feared 12 months ago that you were able to kind of solve?
Yeah, in the last 12 months, some of our big challenges have been, we've been scaling really fast, especially the CNC side. I mean, this whole building is 12 months old. We ran into bottlenecks of power.
Just getting power to the building?
Yeah. So I think we have 1,200 amps in this building. and you start to add more and more machines. And then we're like, oh, turns out we miscalculated on how much air compression we need. And so, we're like, the manufacturer says it uses this much air, but it actually uses a little bit more. Then you need a second compressor. Compressors use way more electricity than our CNC machines do. And so you're like, okay, crap. That one compressor is going to take the electrical footprint of 4 machines. So we need to figure out what our next batch of machines is going to be. It's just these little unexpected things. We'll be like, hey, we got to land all these machines. And we're so focused on getting the machines, negotiating the price, scheduling the techs to come out that we're like, oh, we also need a lot of electricians here that day. And our favorite electrician is booked out 6 weeks because they just landed a huge job somewhere. So we have to go to a backup electrician, and they don't know us as much and they're unfamiliar with the equipment. And then they wire it a different way. It's just like all these little things that it's like death by 1,000 cuts.
Is that another thing? When we were talking last night, you said that you wanted to buy like a much larger, warehouse to turn into a factory very quickly, but it just didn't have the power requirements that you needed. Like, is that one of the biggest constraints? Is the buildings that you want just literally don't have the necessary functionality effectively to make it work?
Yeah. I was talking to Saurav from StarPath, and I was just talking to Ed from Makina Labs the other day, and they were kind of thinking about like, hey, Reno seems pretty cool. Like, should we come to Reno? I was like, yeah, Reno's great for a lot of reasons. We have huge buildings. There's almost no power in them. And, because this is a region that's dedicated to logistics. And in logistics, you need a lot of space, but only enough power to charge forklifts or whatever. So we're trying to figure out, how do we get power in incredibly quickly? How do we, go to NV Energy and try and get to the top of their list, and then order transformers that maybe aren't approved by NV Energy, but we can get them from, a different state. And then you have to go through a permitting process and try and get them like recertified or whatever. Things that you don't think about become these huge bottlenecks. So then when we're looking at other locations, we're like, okay, can we go to a metro that has a lot of power? They have a manufacturing background or a history of it. These buildings that already have 4,000 amps of power. And that's one of our big decisions moving forward, is because it's hard to go to these cities and states that don't have the infrastructure. And I think that's actually a big problem in the US in general, is just power infrastructure now sucks. Everyone wants to reindustrialize, but we don't have the power for it. We need 100 times more power than we have.
Is there any other major bottlenecks that the US infrastructure just does not support?
I think our incentives are misaligned.
What do you mean by that?
I think that the incentives that a software company gets for creating jobs or whatever I think it's easier to get than it is to, grow a manufacturer. I think the way that venture capital looks at software versus manufacturing is, we're tier 8 citizens, compared to software, because it's capital light, and they see these, huge multiples or whatever, whereas manufacturing is incredibly critical. You just don't have the same access to capital as everybody else, or at least that's how it was. I think it's changing. There's a lot of big shifts right now where manufacturing is kind of becoming sexy, and it's a little bit easier to get, but it hasn't changed, as nearly as much as we should. So yeah, money, power. Otherwise, we have a decent amount of raw material. People complain, that it's nowhere as cheap as you can get it offshore or whatever. But it does exist. And there are mills that are starting to come back online. It's kind of too little too late, because for new mills to be spun up, it's incredibly expensive. It takes 5 years, but at least it's starting to happen now. So I think it'll be better in the next 5 to 10 years.
How do you kind of think it's going to shift with having more capacity, raw material costs dropping, and how fast you're able to turn products around?
Did you say raw material costs dropping?
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't happen.
That doesn't happen at all.
Oh my God. Raw material prices do nothing but go up from what I've seen. And something like, the Strait of Hormuz being closed, all of a sudden it's like, okay, there's, 15% of the global supply of aluminum is cut off. So therefore aluminum prices go up. When the Strait opens back up, prices aren't going to drop 15%. It's like gas prices. Gas prices go up $1 if there's, more oil or whatever, like maybe it'll go down 25 cents. It never goes all the way back down. So the way that we get lower prices to our customers is just purchasing in scale. So instead of us buying, 100 tons at a time, can we buy 1,000 or can we buy 10,000? Can we, use those efficiencies of scale in negotiation and efficiency with our vendors, so that they're not starting and stopping a production line for us or something like that. You can negotiate, a few pennies here and there, per pound off of that. And then we pass that along to the customer because we want to be incredibly competitive. And even if we have no competition, like I want the customer to have just a mind-blowing price so that they're encouraged to make more stuff.
Now, remember when like Costco has this rule that they never make more than 15% on any given item in a sale. And there was this one specific case where a shipment of jeans came in and they were way below cost. And so suddenly they were able to, if they wanted to, sell at the normal price and get like a 50% margin on these jeans. And they decided not to because they didn't want to set a bad precedent. Do you have anything like that where you're kind of saying we could charge more, but we're going to not charge more because we want to basically create the best customer experience and know that when you're coming to SendCutSend, you get the best price?
Yeah, of course. I don't know. It's gouging and it's gross. You have to protect your margins, especially when you're bootstrapping. Like your margin is your ability to scale. But consumers are very smart. Like our customers are geniuses. They know if you're trying to, steal from them. And there's always options out there, and there's always like research. People go out and they're like, hey, they're charging me $58 for this, and I'm looking at the raw material, and it's $1 a pound. Like, what the hell are you doing? I don't want to have that conversation. I want it to feel very, very fair. So, like I said, even if there's no competition, we should focus on having the absolute lowest prices, the fastest service, so that people just kind of get used to like, oh, this is how manufacturing should be done. I don't feel like I'm getting screwed over.
They don't even need to price compare because they just know that the best price and the best timelines and stuff is going to be here.
And if you lower prices, people do more with it. Like they order more stuff. It's gonna allow their company to grow. I'm gonna give them some room to have margin on their end product. If I charge someone, I gouge them on margin, and then they got to go mark it up. Like their business isn't going to survive. All these little middlemen, they're adding value or whatever, taking their little slice. It gets wildly expensive. I mean, that's why we're trying to go so vertical. It's so that we eliminate a lot of middlemen, pass that price on to the consumer. They can run a better business. They can grow. I want people to bootstrap off of us. That's our legacy. I'm proud of that.
When you're turning on a new factory, you want to basically minimize the number of days between actually putting dollars down and signing some contract and things going out the door as finished products. What's the process for minimizing the number of days on that?
You got to gamble. So like right now, our 150,000 square feet across the street, when we started negotiating the letter of intent, we placed POs on equipment. And it was like equipment for that building, for that layout, even though we don't have a lease. Like as of right now, we don't have a signed lease. Pretty damn close, but we've already scheduled electricians. We're hiring for that building. We're taking a gamble. We've done it many times. If the gamble fails, then we'll go to plan B, plan C, whatever. It'll cost us a little bit of time. But if the gamble pays off, we're 60 days ahead of everybody. So for us, if I can save 30 days, that's millions of dollars. The way that it compounds, the faster I can get into production, then the faster I can scale that facility. So I don't really know the math on it, but like 30 days saved at the beginning is like, $10 million of new capacity after 12 months because you're so far ahead, the way that ramps. So yeah, we gamble a lot. We kind of make some educated guesses and some hopes.
When you're thinking about taking some kind of risk like that, what's going through your mind? As in, you obviously wouldn't hire electricians if you didn't think that building was going to operate, on some date. So at what point does it make sense to just take that gamble, hire the people, schedule things?
It's optionality. We always have a worst case scenario plan. I will rarely take a gamble that, I can't go to plan B on. if I ordered all this equipment and the lease fell through, and I had no other building, like that would be incredibly painful. So yeah, maybe we go to a building that's a little further away, or it's a little older, has less power or something. Like, at least we can keep moving. So it's always aim for perfection and you'll end up at excellence. And that's what Brian Wolf, our VP of operations, always says. So we have this like brilliant dream that we're trying to hit, and usually it doesn't work out perfectly, but the next step down is pretty damn good.
How do you kind of maintain a maniacal sense of urgency?
I don't think it can be trained. I think it has to be bred into you. I don't know if there's a difference between urgency and impatience. Maybe it's the same thing, but I don't have any patience. If it's within my control, I want it as soon as I possibly can get it. When I was little, working on model airplanes and model cars, like you gotta put the spray paint on it and then wait for it to dry. And I never waited. You know, I'd be working with wet paint and trying to like assemble a thing, and then you have like glue and wet paint, and the thing would look like shit, and then I'd smash it. I don't know. I'm trying to leverage my urgency. That sounds better than impatience. I'm going to use that in business, and I think it benefits our customers. But I don't know if you can teach it. So right now, Phil Inchide, Brian Wolf, and myself, so our director of manufacturing, our VP of operations, and me, we huddle up often, and we are the three most impatient people in the world. Like when we're walking down the hall and they see the three of us, they're like, "Oh God, what are you guys up to?" It's because we know exactly what we want, and we're just not there yet, and we're trying to figure out how to get there as fast as we possibly can within our constraints. If you don't have that in your org, then you'll fall behind.
Are you going to try to do something where you basically take the people that are super well trained from these first few factories that you've spent a lot of time with and kind of forward deploy them almost at the new factories for the first like few months or a year to get that DNA like similar to what you actually have today?
Yeah. I love the term forward deployed, although I think it discounts like, you know, our men and women in the military who are actually forward deployed and seeing some shit. Being forward deployed to Paris, Kentucky is not the same as Afghanistan. But yes, we have that concept. So we're really lucky to have a lot of young staff. You know, our average age in the machine shop here is like 25.2 years old or something like that. And oftentimes when these opportunities come up, it's like, hey, you want to go to Texas either permanently or you want to go there for 6 weeks and, you know, help spread the SendCutSend love and teach people stuff. We get a lot of hands in the air. They're like, yes, I want to go do it. And then there's career paths too. It's like, hey, maybe you think that there's no higher that you can go in this particular building. Well, maybe you can go spin up a new building. You know, maybe you can be a shift lead or in charge of the building or something like that. So it's really cool. They can see that career path now, which is one of the reasons why I want to keep opening up buildings too. I would hate for SendCutSend to hit a plateau where all of a sudden, like, you have to wait for your boss to die or retire in order to, you know, get a new opportunity. There's too many like really cool young people that deserve us to do really, really cool stuff. And if I can do it under our own roofs, then I'm really happy.
I think one of the biggest issues when companies scale, or one of the biggest things that people run into, is the thing that made you great is no longer what you're actually doing. So with like Soren at Neuros, he loved making drones, and he just designed and soldered and all this stuff in his garage, and he made these drones. And then when I was talking with him a few months ago, he said, I now realize, like, got into this business because I love making drones, and now I'm not spending my time making drones at all. I'm mostly focusing on how do we scale, scale the team, all this stuff. How do you kind of think about maintaining your sense of joy, making sure that you're doing the thing that you actually enjoy doing, that brings you joy, and you have fun with over time as you scale?
I've been full of joy, or whatever. I've been doing that for 8 years. I haven't known any different. This is a huge puzzle for me to solve. Before I started this business, I would get all my problem solving skills out either via software, running the software company, or through like cars and hobbies. And you're trying to stuff way too big of an engine and way too small of a car, and there's challenges, and that's cool. This company is full of those wild problem solving challenges all the time. So even if it was solving HR or staffing or something, or something mechanical or, a material issue. It's fun problems and challenges. I can tell you though, that I went through hell the last, 3 months or so trying to raise money. It is not fun. I am not good at it. And it does not bring me any joy. It's a huge distraction. It's a completely different skill set than being on the floor, like hearing a machine. You're like, oh, that's going to chatter a little bit, or I bet that bit is dull. Like, I know that kind of stuff, but trying to sell people your company and get them to like love it at the level that you love it, it's exhausting. So that did not bring me a lot of joy. The process was, I heard that our process was actually pretty smooth compared to others, but I'm really excited to get back to doing what I do best, which is build. So when I see a 150,000 square foot empty building or a 300,000 square foot building in another state, I'm like back in my element. So yeah, I have to stay in my element. I thought everything was my element, but not fundraising.
I think that was a really big decision to go do it at all. And I know that you're very focused on finding the right partners and making sure that the people that you're working with are in it for the same reasons that you are and are aligned with your vision for where you want to take the company. So how did you decide which partners made sense with that context?
You get to pick. Like, you can't really pick your brother-in-law. Like, if you go to get married, the brother-in-laws just come with it. And I'm lucky to have awesome brother-in-laws. I have 3 really cool brother-in-laws. But I've seen some guys who get married and brother-in-law's a total dick, or you could say mother-in-law, whatever, right? Everyone complains about their mother-in-law. You don't get to pick that. I see investor partners as like kind of a marriage, but you get to pick. And I was really lucky to have enough, opportunity to talk to a bunch of different people where I got to figure out who's just cool. Like, who do I want to have a beer with? If we're getting married, like, who do I want to hang out with? And who can just like be cool? Who can I text at midnight and be like, dude, I can't sleep. Like, what do I do about this thing? I was lucky to find that in, Andrew and Matt and Patrick Collison, and they're weapons. And I think we were, I don't know if lucky is the word. I think we were patient enough to wait until we could attract that level of person. It's not necessarily the firm. I mean, Sequoia and Paradigm, Patrick Collison are rad. They're the best of the best, but it's more about the person. Like, if you come from Disney company or whatever, but you're a total turd, that sucks. So focus more on the person. I'd rather have someone from, a really small company that's just easy to work with. Cause we're going to be doing this for a long time. This is not like a race to the exit thing. It's just like, cool.
Have you already had moments where they were able to come in, or one of them was able to come in and kind of unfuck a problem for you or help you think through some next challenge in a better way?
Yeah. These guys are incredibly good at what they do. And if they're not good at something, they know someone who is. And it's so crazy being connected to this like brand new network. Like, we had all these nodes in manufacturing, these hubs and spokes of connections and vendors and electricians. Like, I'm good at that stuff. I know a bunch of different plumbers that can come fix toilets at any time. I know machine techs that'll jump out of bed and do all this stuff. But then you're like, hey, how do I deal with, money and banks? And how do I do like executive recruiting? That's where these guys like are worth their weight in gold. And I never put any emphasis on that internally, because I was like, I don't know, it seems weird. But when someone loves it and they're good at it and it's a weapon for you, then it's a perfect match.
I think a lot of the best companies allow certain aspects of the business, just like you were describing. You were okay delaying, making something a priority, saying we're just going to focus on how do we set up these factories, how do we delight customers, and delay on like perfect accounting and all this stuff. How do you kind of decide which areas to focus on, and versus which ones you can just basically completely ignore?
It's easy to focus on the pain first, right? So it's pain or pleasure, right? Does the customer have pain, or is the customer getting pleasure? If those are 2 things that you focus on, just keep throwing money at it or throw effort at it. If the customer doesn't really know, then it always goes to the back burner. So one of the things we always say is it our problem or their problem? And so if the customer is like, hey, I want to upload this thing, but my file doesn't work, I'm getting all these errors, that's our problem. We should totally fix it. If they're like, hey, I want to upload the recipe for a cake and have you send me a cake, I'm like, well, that's your problem. I'm not going to do that right now. So when it comes to like efficiency of the back office and how we do our accounting and how we reconcile our books and all that kind of stuff, the customer doesn't care. It's not their problem. It's our problem. We'll deal with it, behind the scenes when we have time. So yeah, we've kind of kicked the can down the road on some of that stuff, and we got to probably straighten up a little bit in some of those areas. But I think a lot of people starting out, they read books or they get the wrong advice, and they try and have everything perfect in their business from day one. They're like, oh, well, I have to make sure that my accounting is this level of perfect, and I need to set up all these SOPs and bylaws and whatever. No, have a good product first, figure it out. People have come to me and said like, hey, Jim, will you invest? I want to do a restaurant or whatever. I was like, go start with a hot dog stand. Go do a hot dog stand really, really well. And then go to a food truck, and then if the food truck is really popular or whatever, then go do a restaurant. But a lot of people like start planning their restaurant first and they haven't even done anything. So worry about the customer experience first. Everything else will kind of fall into place, especially over a longer period of time. Every year that you pay your taxes, every year that you talk to your CPA, you dial in things a little bit better. We just had a huge test with the due diligence. So that's what no one tells you. This is like, you can talk to an investor all you want and they'll say like, yeah, everything looks cool. The business looks awesome. And then it goes to diligence. Holy crap. Like they go through everything. They're trying to figure out like, what's going on. They're looking at like cookies on the website. They're seeing like, oh, do you have a metapixel? And because there's these new suits that people are going after metapixels that aren't disclosed. I'm like, thank God we didn't have any of that. But just these little wrinkles that people uncover. It would be so daunting to have to do all that in year one. It would destroy a lot of your customer experience. But like I said, if you're patient, you keep doing it. You knock some of those check boxes off every single year, and then eventually you're pretty good.
So when we were talking last night, you mentioned that you really loved Home Depot as this example of a business that kind of empowers individuals to modify their homes and make changes and improvements without needing to have a complex network of everyone that knows what's what. And I think a combination of that with YouTube is just incredibly empowering. How do you kind of think about the analogy of your business to Home Depot?
Yeah, I'm hoping that we can be similar. Before Home Depot, if you wanted something done, you'd have to go to a lumber yard, which may or may not be open to the public. If you needed a toilet, you'd have to like call a plumber and he'd be like, hey, here's my 2 distributors that I work with. You have 2 choices. It was very, very complex. You'd have to go through a bunch of different steps, limited choices, unknown prices, unknown timeline. I think Home Depot disrupted that, not only for the homeowner and like the everyman, the DIYer, but for contractors too. Like I know today you can go and get roofing materials at Home Depot as a contractor, sometimes less than you can get it from a distributor because of that scale. So manufacturing is very similar to the pre-Home Depot days right now. You can't just like walk into a place and chit chat and try and figure something out. You can't go into a manufacturer that does every service under one roof. If SendCutSend could be, a fraction of that, I think it benefits everyone. It benefits people just learning about manufacturing, like all these, young engineers that are graduating and maybe they have a degree in mechanical engineering, but they've barely run a lathe. They need to come in and see what manufacturing is actually like. And then to all the seasoned people, they're used to dealing with a very small subset of vendors that are telling them what's possible. It's like, well, what if you could go into this, big manufacturer that has everything under the sun and learn and see what else is out there? So accessibility, I keep talking about accessibility to manufacturing, and Home Depot did accessibility to home improvement. I think SendCutSend could add accessibility to manufacturing.
I think for a very long time, we've kind of like outsourced manufacturing, and there's a whole lot of reasons we've done that. Now this is kind of flipping and we're bringing things back to America. We're going to make more things in America. What is like different about today than 5 years ago or 10 years ago that is enabling this?
I don't know. It feels like vibes. I don't know how else to put it. There's some raw of patriotism, reindustrialization. People are a little scared of offshore now. It's like, oh, are they going to cut off my supply chain without any warning? Are they going to steal all my IP and make a competitor or whatever? I don't think people realized those issues, in the early days. And now everyone's like a little more aware. They're a little scared, and US is actually a viable option now. We're in our early days for accessibility and price and speed and everything, but we're getting there. So I think people are testing the waters.
You've been basically capacity constrained for the past 7 years, something like this. And you've never necessarily had the money in order to build capacity significantly ahead of demand. How are you kind of thinking to yourself how to build capacity today without a full clear picture of here's exactly where the demand is going to materialize and just making sure that goes well?
Well, I believe that we would have all the work in the world if we could say, hey, order today, you get it tomorrow, with any process that you want, whatever, and at a really, really low price. So I'm not too worried about building capacity ahead of our demand. I think the capacity creates demand. As soon as we have machines idle, all of a sudden, the lead time drops to near zero. It's like, hey, order it by noon, come pick it up at 1. Like, I don't care. We're going to be incredibly fast if we had excess capacity. Then people are like, wow, I can get it so fast. I'm going to order more. And then that capacity starts to fill up. And then that's where we go back to that ratchet thing where I'm like, okay, crap. If I just told them they could have it in 1 hour, I can't go backwards from that. So I have to keep adding more and more capacity. I don't worry too much about getting ahead of it. If, let's say we reached total market share for, sheet metal or something like that, that's cool, because then we can add another service. Manufacturing is, infinite in possibilities. There's, stamping and injection molding and tube and, forming and forging and, everything else that you can imagine under the sun, casting. So as long as our customers are creative, as long as they need parts or projects manufactured in the USA, and we have the ability to add new services and capacity, then we will never run out of things to do.
How do you think about basically building capacity in the event that you have this like surge demand and you need to fulfill it in a short period of time? How do you actually do that?
You always need some surge capacity, because as a on-demand manufacturer, we have no idea what we're going to do that day. We might do 100 parts or we might do 1 million. I don't know what people are going to order. So we have flexibility built into the system, but there's only so much surge you can take. So being able to have, 10 times the surge capacity it's hard to do, because then you have idle equipment, and idle equipment doesn't amortize very well. You want those machines running the best possible uptime, but part of being quick turn is we have to have surge capacity whether we want it or not, because we have to have redundancy as well. We have to take machines offline for planned or unplanned maintenance. So there's always some bit in there. We want additional surge capacity, but then we fill it with demand. I don't know. It's like this.
It's a very difficult
oscillation.
Like, needle to thread.
Yeah, it never ends. I don't know if there's a right answer. It's this algorithm that I don't think we can ever solve, but we're trying.
One of the things that you do that I haven't seen very many other people do is you're like default skeptical. You have a very high bar for the people that you allow close to you and who you let into your life. But once they're in, they're really in. Why did you kind of come to that philosophy?
I have one of the best bullshit meters that I know of. I don't know where that comes from. But man, I can just sense if someone's
Like
not
inauthenticity.
Yeah. It triggers me. I'm a pretty good salesman. I like to sell and I like to build relationships and everything, but I always do it in a trustworthy way, because I'm so sensitive to when people are lying to me or they have an ulterior motive or something like that. So yeah, default skeptical. I guess I am. I was going to say I'm actually incredibly trusting in the first interaction. I'm like, we're going to be best friends, or we're going to get married, whatever. I'm super excited. And then as the relationship goes on, if I see something, all of a sudden my radar will go up, and, maybe I'll have to push back a little bit and then earn it back. So it's kind of like Dunning-Kruger, where I'm like, this is going to be great. And then I see a little something and I have to reset. But being skeptical allows you to, I don't know, have some backup plans, I guess. I'm like, okay, I thought this was going to be really great. I saw something that maybe I'm unsure of. I'm going to research it. But then immediately I'm starting to plan, like, okay, if this doesn't work out, what am I going to do? I guess I do that with people. I do it with equipment. I do it with buildings, whatever. It's, wow, this new building is going to be incredible. And then we get in there and we're like, oh God, it's full of raccoons. So I'm like a little skeptical, and then build it back up at the same time, knowing, okay, if we have to punch out of here, I have a backup.
Let's end it on, what are you most excited about over the next 12 to 24 months for the business?
I'm excited that I get to go back to doing what I do best, which is build. I have a much longer leash now. I can run faster than I ever have. And then I'm really excited that I have all this experience. We've done it before. We just had constraints. I have a little less constraint now. So I don't know. I'm excited for the impact that we're going to have on manufacturing in the US. I'm excited for the positive impact we're going to have for our customers. I'm excited to kind of show the roadmap, show the template of, hey guys, if I can do it, anyone can do it. I don't know if this plan is going to work out perfectly, but hopefully it does. And people can model it and say, hey, let's do it the SendCutSend way. Let's build something that's really good and it can survive on its own two legs. And then you add a little rocket fuel and then you do more and more and more. I think it's the way to build a business. I think it's the way to do manufacturing in the US. I hope that we're an example that people look up to. I don't know. I'm super happy. I'm happy to be done fundraising. I'm happy to go back to hauling ass and making cool stuff.